again, they're cooking. You got your goose hanging over there. You got a bunny over there. You got a chicken cage.
In a 4-star hotel.
I thought it was a 5-star.
No, we would say the Gaylord. That would have been a 5-star.
Ah. What about me?
All right, everybody go see the spinning room, the loom.
That's cool. And bigger than I thought. I just got here. Bless you.
Brain itch. Stand over here with me. My brain doesn't itch. If your brain does not itch, stand by Olivia. If looking at the house, Olivia and Olivia, go stand together. Both Livias, go stand together.
Oh, my.
All right. If your brain itches, come stand by me. Bless you. There we go. Perfect.
And the door. Why are them too small windows above the door? What's wrong with that? And that middle door.
It's massive.
There we go. Okay. For those of you who are over here back by us. Oh, it's not. Yeah. All right. River Forest, over here, please.
Oh my God, bro, my OCD.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
For those of you who saw nothing wrong with this, talk to this group over here and find out why our brains itch. One. So we are left with this asymmetry that drives all of us crazy. You guys see it now? You see what's wrong?
Yeah, I just don't like the way it looks.
All right. So Mr. Witt, if you want to
Better.
no, not yet. On our feet.
I'd like to
On our
not be in
feet.
the sun.
Coming down into the That was funny.
You love it.
You're in it for the long ride.
There's also a brick.
This is called a ha-ha wall. It's actually a European architectural landscaping feature, so that
It's not safe. But down there, yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order? Huh.
We're going to have the reading of something known as General Washington's letter to the governors. Now, if you just give me a few seconds, I'll explain a few things to you. This is General Washington's second tomb. Originally, when General Washington passed away, he was actually placed in an old tomb which faces out to the river. It was one built for his brother, his older half-brother, and where his older half-brother was entombed along with his children. When General Washington passed away, in his will, he had requested that a new tomb be built because he said the old tomb was in poor location and it was in poor shape. And he picked the spot below the orchard enclosure, which is where we are. He said, I want it made out of brick and I want it made larger. The problem was that his executors did not carry that part of the will out until 1830 and was finished in 1831. And initially, it was nothing more than a brick rectangular thing with a dome, with an arched roof. Bare brick up front of it. At that point, there were 22 sets of remains in the old tomb, and they came in and they took all of them out, placed them in new coffins, and placed them within the vault of the tomb. And the vault of the tomb begins at the door back there. That's actually the beginning of the tomb. There were 22 sets of remains placed in there, including General and Mrs. Washington in the coffin. From the time General Washington had passed away, people came to Mount Vernon to come to his tomb. And in many cases, they took souvenirs with them and left souvenirs on the bricks and everything, that carved their names and everything. So there was a lot of damage done. And about 2 years after the tomb was built, they built this enclosure around it to protect the tomb. Put great gates in front of it. About 2 years after that, about 1835, a sculptor from Philadelphia offered to give them the sarcophagus that you see in there, with the intent for it to go into the vault. but when it was delivered, it was too big to fit through the door, and the sculptor told them that with the conditions inside the vault being the way they were wet and moldy and nasty, because of the way it was sitting in the earth, that it would be better to have it placed outside. And they convinced the family to build up the courtyard in the front with marble so that the two sarcophagi could sit out front and be seen. And they built an arched roof over top of it and plastered the walls, give it the view that you have right here with General Washington and Mrs. Washington. They then placed the sarcophagi there and brought General and Mrs. Washington's remains out of the vault and placed them in the sarcophagi, put the tops on and cemented them shut. That was in, I think, 1837. It's been that way since 1830. General Washington is the sarcophagus on the right, and on top, of course, you have the shield of the United States, the American flag, and he's on top of it. Mrs. Washington is off to the left. She has on the top of hers, it says Martha, Consort of Washington. Her age and the date that she passed away. Notice in front, you'll see two flags. Of course, the American flag you recognize, but you may not recognize the one on the right. That is known, it is known as the Commander-in-Chief's flag. It was General Washington's headquarters flag from the Revolutionary War. We believe he designed it, and we know he is the only man in history to use it. This was the only man who was the Commander-in-Chief of the Commonwealth. So that's what you see right here. Now, these two monuments that you see right here were placed in 1850 by one of the last owners of Mount Vernon. They honor the three Washington families that owned Mount Vernon after General and Mrs. Washington passed away. Bushrod Washington and his wife, he was Associate Justice Supreme Court, John Augustine Washington II and his wife, and their son, John Augustine Washington III and his wife. Bushrod and his wife, John Augustine II and his wife, are actually in the vault. Their son is the individual, John Augustine Washington III, who sold Mount Vernon to the Mount Vernon Ladies Association in 1858. He's actually buried up in Charlestown, West Virginia. He was killed in the Civil War as a member of Robert E. Lee's staff. So that's what you have right here. Now, why in the world do we honor General Washington? Let's think about it. He was the first commander, the only commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. He was named to that post the 15th of June, 1775. Today is the anniversary of the United States Army. It was created on the 14th. He was named commander-in-chief the day after the 15th. And he served throughout the entire 8.5 years of the war. And in doing so, he took on, with it, basically a ragtag army, the greatest military power in American history, and won. He kept the army together when it was thought impossible. And then he did something that shocked the world. He gave it all up. He went to Congress and gave his commission back to Congress to come back here to Mount Vernon, hoping never to have to do anything more in public life again. He expected that. It shocked the world. In fact, when George III heard that he did it, the King of England, he said, if he's actually doing that, he's the greatest man in the world. Because he could have been King of America. His officers and men wanted to actually overthrow the government and make it that. He wouldn't let them do it. He came back to Mount Vernon. But of course, the government that we had, the Artists Confederation, wasn't strong enough to keep the country together. And there was a group that wanted us to have a stronger government. But they knew that it wouldn't work unless he was part of the creation of it. And so they begged him and begged him and begged him to come to Philadelphia in 1787. It wasn't a thing that he jumped at. He had to be begged. And he eventually did. And of course, when he went up to Philadelphia, they named him the president of the convention that creates our government, our Constitution. And when it was finally put in place, he will be elected the very first president of the United States. In fact, he's not just elected, he was the only man in history unanimously chosen by the Electoral College. And then he was re-elected by the Electoral College unanimously again. But after 2 terms, he wasn't going to do it again. To make sure that it didn't happen, he actually published his farewell address in the paper before the Queen went to bring his name up. He again stepped away from power. So that's really why we honor him. He helped us get our independence. He helped create our government, and he put it on a firm foundation. And then he stepped away. We honor him for that. And we also honor Mrs. Washington, because most people don't realize that during the American Revolution, she spent thousands and thousands of dollars of her own money sewing and sewing clothing and getting food for the soldiers. And she spent every single winter campaign with her husband. Every winter quarters, starting in 1775. She was at Valley Fort, she was at Morristown, she was at all of it. And then she came home, and she was happy. She'd be here at Mount Vernon. Of course, what happens? Her husband goes away to be the president because she complained. No, she went to New York and Philadelphia for 8 years. Never complained. Supported her husband the whole time. So we honor her for that. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention before I did is I wanted to tell you a little bit about that. But we're going to have the reading of something different. When the Revolutionary War started to come to a close, General Washington saw that something happened. Because actually the last of the fighting was really Yorktown. Major fighting was Yorktown. It was 2 years before the end of the war. And in that 2-year period, the states began to pull apart. And General Washington was afraid that we would become 13 little tiny independent nations. And he didn't want that. He had fought for 8.5 years for a unified nation. And so he sent a letter to every single government. It's the same letter, telling them why they had to stay together. And this is the final period.
I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have you and the state over which you reside in his holy protection, that he would incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate a spirit of subordination and obedience to government, to entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another, for their fellow citizens of the United States at large, and particularly for their brethren who have served in the field, and finally, that he would most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves without charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind, which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without an humble imitation of whose example in these things we can never hope to be a happy nation.
Open this up and let you take. I can't go beyond this for a moment. I'm going to be closing this back up in just a couple of minutes. They're making a mess here. The U.S., here's your gift. Yeah. Do with them as you please.
So many little peoples, Bo. So many.
You really have to want to see it. I have trouble seeing it.
Is it this way or that?
Left.
You're welcome.
All right, start watching the flagpole.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it does.
It does look like it's rising.
It still looks like it's going in.
It's because of how I'm moving.
All right, if you say so. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna jump off the coach. Adam's gonna drive around to the opposite side. We'll get out, get a couple group photos, because I know you guys are well practiced at that. So all you will need is a camera. No gift shop, no bathrooms, no water pit stop.
Where's the flag, Mo?
Right there, genius. Look up, man.
Her flag.
You don't need a flag. You got that big one.
So what's it? So we are supposed to climb that if we want to hear your speech. Okay. Is she separating from us or no?
She's going, Mo, you want to take a picture with us?
You're coming over here.
Do you sound like walking that?
We finished up with Washington, and now we're on the.
Vlogging, my guy?
Yes, I'm vlogging, my guy. So now we're at the airport, waiting to get back on the bus.
The bus.
The bus.
The airplane.
Yeah. Yes, the bus can fly.
It's magic school bus.
It's the magic school bus, Bo. Just hit me with your suitcase, Bo. So now we're just waiting till our flight leaves. We're just casually sitting in here. We see this. And now we are going back home. Funny seeing you guys here.
Oh my god, I didn't know you guys were this long.
No way. And I even have a window this time. Yeah. Just got off the bus and now we're just waiting for our luggage to come on one of these machines. Then we'll go on the bus and then go home.
President and and we had a blast. It was so fun. And your town, so cute. So that was really awesome too. People stay here. I don't know. Oh my god.
I hate the wolf.
Final shout out. This trip wouldn't have happened without one special man. He stuck with you all, even when the school year was over, and decided to take this trip with you. Can we get a round of applause, please, for Mr. Wade? Yeah, that was, I couldn't so props to you.
Good work, Mr. Witt. Okay. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Special speech about Gage Lemon over here. Most questions asked. She hot dog. There he goes.
They just threw his cane. Dude, they just threw your umbrella, man. It's on the grass, bro.
Wow, yeah. Back home, extremely tired. That's it. That's all.